first thing you're gonna do is pat your meat dry, and you can see that there's some liquid on there. This is not blood, it's actually called myoglobin. It is a protein that looks red, but it is just the juice of the meat, and all the blood has already been drained at the point of slaughter. So you can see here, skirt steak is the prime example of showing where the grain is, because you can see clearly these lines going through the steak. So basically, before you cook, keep the cut along the grain, and when you're going to basically sit down to eat, cut against the grain. Okay, so anytime you're eating your meat, make sure that you're cutting against any grain that you see in your meat. There's some dishes that you actually can cut against the grain already for like quick cooking dishes such as stir fries. So what basically cutting against the grain is doing is, if you were to imagine these mussels as straws in the meat filled with water, keeping the water in the straws is to your best interest until it's time to eat, because the juices are going to flow once you're eating and not while you're cooking, okay? Keeping the cut along the grain before you eat or while you're cooking will keep the juices intact in the steak, and then when you're sitting down to eat, you can cut against the grain. However, for a stir fry, you are cooking really fast and you're gonna eat right away, so we can cut against the grain right away. This is a pretty long piece of meat, so what I'm gonna do is cut in the center first. So you can see here, the muscle fibers are going straight down, and then that's gonna make it easier for me to cut against the grain. So this is how I cut against the grain. And for a stir fry, try to do a diagonal cut here, and make sure your knife is really sharp. And what you're gonna see is basically a cross section of those muscle fibers or those straws that I was talking about earlier. So if you have any grains that you're seeing, always cut against the grain if you are eating right away in a stir fry or like a quick cooking dish like fajitas, for example, okay? However, you might say that in some steaks, for example, like a tenderloin, you can't see the grain like this, because for primary cuts like tenderloin, ribeye, and striploin, they are the most tender cuts, so the fibers are very fine. You can't see them. So actually, it doesn't matter which direction you cut for primary cuts because they're so tender. So only when you see a grain, that's when you need to cut against them. But now I hope that gives you a bit of an idea when to cut against the grain and when to keep along the grain.